So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the advisory board meeting on the evening of Wednesday, March 11th. I am Arthur Franzak, the chair of the advisory board. Could folks go around and introduce themselves, please?
Mike Huff.
Susan Klein.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
David Lutz.
Susan Jacobson.
A wonderful administrator. And we're introducing ourselves.
Kristen Balish.
All right. We have a agenda for this evening that includes a reserve fund transfer request from the fire department, a budget overview discussion about where we're at. We're going to then talk about the warrant articles as they stand today. And we were going to approve minutes, but I guess we don't have any
Next week,
minutes. So.
Mike.
That's my fault.
Not a problem. So that's this evening's agenda. We will go ahead and get started. Can we start off the line-off with the reserve fund transfer request?
Drag a chair up.
I'm coming.
Pull up a chair, introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hi.
Mike Robinson, Town Administrator.
Hi, I'm Pete Churchill, Deputy Fire Chief.
So we're actually,
Thank you.
have had a chance to study further the funding source for this and change direction a little bit. We're not here tonight for a reserve fund transfer. We are still planning to spend money to fix the truck, but we have identified that we have more than the required amount in vehicle maintenance salaries in DPW.
To cover it.
To cover it, so what we are saying, we want to talk to you about it so you know what's happening and what we're spending it on. And then when we get to the time of year where we do transfers between various line items approved by advisory and select board, we would ask you then to approve a transfer of that, whatever that final amount is, from salaries to expense, so that expense, going forward shows what we actually spent in 2020 on vehicles.
So can you spend things either in separate items like whatever?
So I know that
expenses
the
versus
finance
salaries?
director is behind me
He's
in
not
the
in
audience,
this.
but I think he would probably nod up and down.
Okay,
But you
great.
approved, the town meeting approved an overall
Department.
public works budget,
Got it.
and so things can be transferred in between. We would
Okay.
just want you to transfer it so it shows where it was actually spent when the
Understood.
books closed at the end of the year.
Well, thanks for being so diligent about finding the funding source, and this is a great heads up for when you want to move the money within the departmental account. You have the floor.
Okay, sure. Just to kind of give you a quick overview of what we're looking for is, we've experienced some internal problems with the motor of our 2007 emergency one custom pumper. The truck has had some problems over the last, major problems over the last 6 to 8 months. I think the one thing I want to just maybe make a commentary about is that the problems that we're experiencing aren't a result of a lack of maintenance. They're not a problem with the way it's been operated. It's just some anomaly that has occurred, and that and the problems have really ramped up over the last 6 to 8 months, like I said. Over that period of time, the truck has been out of service for about 51 days. The problems seem to have centered around the exhaust system with some of the different emissions that were put into place in 2007. So as we had them fixed and so forth over the last 6 months, at a cost at one time of about $6,000. I know they were focusing mostly on the exhaust, hoping that that was the problem. After more diagnostic testing with it, as we had recurrence of these problems, they found that it was more of an internal problem with the motor, which I've kind of laid out there. Initially, like I said, it was looked to be some of the filter systems and some of the exhaust system, which had to get baked out, they call it, and cleaned out. But again, now they found that it's an internal component. Some of the rings in the truck are worn. They had to pull the head off it. They're going to try to do an in-truck rebuild, which is better than pulling the motor right out of the truck, which again would be a cost of about $21,000.
Is it operable right now?
It's not, no. It's been out of service since February 21st, and it's up at Cummings dealer up in Spencer at this time, and they've got it started they started to pull it apart already.
Mr. Booth had a question.
The in-truck rebuild is the 21.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
What we're pulling in, do you have any sense of?
I don't have an answer to that now. No. I think as they
think it's going to work?
They're hoping,
Yeah.
the head is off right now, it's at the machine shop, and they're hoping there's obviously no cracks in it and so forth. They've
Right.
looked at the crankshaft, they've realized that the oil pressure is good right now, so their feeling is that what we need to do with it for what they propose should suffice.
And so the list, separately, I think Stuart gave you all a list of what all the parts and the labor and materials are that we believe we're gonna need to spend.
And in the sheet that I provided, I just tried to kind of give you an overview of the truck and what it is and how we use it and why we need multiple engines. And obviously the truck's been out, like I said, since February 21st. We do have a second pumper that we use as our primary piece now with the tank truck that supplements that at this time.
When you say you found the money from salaries, is it because someone retired and the new person makes less?
So
We
this
didn't,
would
we
be-
didn't fill the position that had been held by Paul Vito this year,
Okay.
so that's why the money's available,
Okay.
yes.
And then how long is the truck supposed to last?
So the truck and custom pumper like this should last between 15 and 20 years.
Okay,
So
so
it's
you've
a-
got another 6
So it's a
to
13,
7
yeah.
years on it?
Yeah, and I think the thing is too, is with the rebuild, they'll guarantee it for 2 years,
Okay.
the engine.
The rest of the truck performs?
Yes, yep,
appropriately?
100%.
Frame?
Yep, yep, no problems at all. Everything's kind of been centered on the motor and what we've been experiencing, especially the last 6 to 8 months.
Are you not planning to fill Paul Vito's spot this year?
No.
Okay.
Any questions that the advisory board has? Anything we didn't cover live? I really appreciate the heads up. Thanks for the proactivity. We'll expect this to get transferred when the time comes.
Thank you.
There being no other questions, thanks so much for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you so much, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian, appreciate it.
You're of course welcome to stay for the whole, I'm just.
Nice try.
Yeah.
You get sick.
Alrighty, next item on our agenda. Wonderful Mr. Lindmark is going to join us and chat about where the status of the budget is today along with why.
So we continue to work on the budget and, since we met with you last, a number of things have come into place that we were waiting for. Both of the school committees have given us their certified numbers. We received our health insurance increase, which is 3.67% for next year, not bad. And we've been continuing to look at the options we put on the table in the February 8th meeting. Part of what we were doing, and we want to go, you had asked to go into detail tonight, is on the revenue side of the equation, so that's what the sheet is that we've handed out.
Okay.
So I'll tell you where I think where we are overall, but please understand that the select board haven't seen the details of this. They're going to go over this. They met last week and they said, we put in front of them what we thought was a 2.8%, 1% budget. And 2 of the 3 selectmen expressed that they were comfortable at that level. Since we told them we needed to look at revenues more, we were going to bring back some changes, which you'll see here. And we've continued to look at reductions. Some of the reductions or changes they're going to need to talk about more next week because this budget would hinge on some of those changes. And the 2 significant ones are looking at the fees at the transfer station. They haven't been changed in 8 years. And we have been losing money at the station for a couple of reasons. In that time, and it's gotten more significant in the last couple of years. And secondly, we are going to put a proposal on the table to change our contribution to retiree health insurance, which is not insignificant in terms of savings to the town, but also not insignificant in terms of its impact on retirees. So we'll look at that. But overall,
27 million.
the 26, maybe it's 27 where the market is, I don't know. But 20, yeah, the OPEB, the OPEB shortfall. So we are going to be giving them a budget next week that's actually come down from 2.8%, but it's going to need to, they're going to need to make some decisions about whether or not some of those 2 significant changes are something that they want to move forward with because it will impact this, what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
So. You want to talk about revenues and changes?
Sure, so revenues obviously from each of the budget years, you can see the different changes on the line items. Some of the key factors to look at, the top section is the tax levy base, which is the majority of our revenues. And that's the levy limit that we have to adhere to, which is the 2.5% proposition. And that translates to 784, 537 for this year. New growth, talking with the assessor's office, we anticipate that to be around 600,000. Last year, we anticipated it to be around 600,000, and obviously you can see that came in at 582, 661. New growth is not certified till the end of June 30th, so we have to kind of make a best guess estimate, and that's what we anticipate. And factoring in a reserve for abatements of about 125,000 brings us to the 32,641 and $6 for tax revenues. Local receipts, so 4,135,000. That's comprised of motor vehicle excise taxes, some penalties and interest on taxes, payments in lieu of taxes, which is what pilot is. And payment in lieu of taxes is agreements that we have with, I think, 4 people or 4 businesses in town. Instead of paying the tax rate on their personal property, it's a agreement because it's solar related to the solar panels themselves. So, we anticipate that to be about 75,000. Water department, we get indirect costs. There's costs associated with running the water department that's offset by the town. And then I also factor in the reduction both on the pension amount that's on the employee benefits, on the expenses that we can talk at a different time, because that's not included in the revenues, and also on the healthcare insurance. I factor a reduction in from the water department on that too. And the same thing with septic indirect. Transfer station revenue, we lowered that amount of revenues from 325 to 300,000. Reason being, the revenues have been off, a little bit lower, 256. Last year was the revenues that came in on our budget for the division.
Is that because less people are using the transfer station, or because people aren't paying their bills?
I think it's a couple things. Recyclable market is gone away, and so there's less revenue there. We also, the staff feels strongly that the system we use to put a sticker on a bag is not the right way to go, that it encourages people to use oversized bags and put one sticker on it, or maybe not even put a sticker on it. And we want to switch to bags where you can't put more than 39 pounds in a 35-pound bag, and if they had to do that correctly, you might be paying for 2 or 3 bags or 2 or 3 stickers rather than one. We also think there's an opportunity to promote what we sell in terms of materials better than we have to people. We can sell it for less than the private sector can, and that might be a benefit.
Such as?
Wood chips. Wood chips, loom,
Okay.
and things like that. So we want to make some changes. What we're going to suggest is simply going to try to get closer to what we think it should be. It's not going to cover the cost, but that's part of the conversation. Where is the board comfortable? How much would they want to charge? Do they want to try and completely cover its costs, or do we want to at least not have as much of a deficit?
Do you know the capacity of the bag, roughly what that would be?
It's a 35-gallon bag, so an average trash bag.
Trash bag, yeah.
So not like a big hefty contractor bag?
And that's what's been happening, we think, in some cases.
So you're going to provide the bag instead of the sticker, or you're going to weigh with the bags that people bring in?
What we'll probably do is swap stickers for bags initially, and then sell the bags at the same price we're selling the stickers. But if you were using one sticker to get rid of, say, 70 gallons worth of, 2 trash bags, now you're going to have to buy 2 stickers. And so
Because your bag will rip when you pick.
I understand they are set to
Fail.
thank you, at a certain weight. But we're also
Still
cognizant
cheaper
of,
than paying for curbside.
it's,
And it's
yes,
fun.
there is
I
that.
enjoy my time at the transfer
Family
station.
activity.
Okay.
So-
Why, just out of curiosity, why do you want to, not that you want to, but why would you want to operate at a deficit? Are you saying that if you charged what it cost you, it would be cost prohibitive to the people in the town?
It would probably start to approach what it costs for curbside.
Okay.
And But it's not anybody's fault here that the recycling market has gone away, and maybe some of it will come back at some point. I'm not an expert in that. And some people, you know, we don't want to necessarily price ourselves out of the market. We're concerned about what people do pay for curbside and whether this is a more cost-effective option for people. At the same time, every resident is paying for it right now because it's losing money. And is that fair? So.
I have a question. Is it a regulation? Do towns have to provide transfer station service?
No.
Is there any discussion whether we should divest ourselves of
Well, we
the
just bought a
transfer
truck.
station?
Which we
Trucks could be sold.
Trucks can be sold. No, we haven't. I mean, in fairness to the board, they haven't had a chance to dialogue on this at all. So we're going to put forward to them some changes that we think are reasonable and start that conversation about, are these rates reasonable? Would you want us to charge more? Is this too much? And try to,
I just, sorry, go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, Jonathan, and during most of my time in town, we actually made money through the transfer station, a little bit, not a lot, and it went up and down based on the recycling market.
Yep.
But the recycling market bit the dust over the last couple of years because of,
I don't think anybody would have a problem with a break even. I mean, I don't think anybody's expecting the transfer station to turn a profit necessarily.
Right.
But if we're talking about, we have all these talks in town about being budget conscious. And we're talking about firing teachers and cutting programs from schools and cutting out the library and cutting out CPC and cutting out affordable housing and all of this stuff. And in one spot, you can actually cut something or raise the prices. It seems silly to have this be a place where there's a deficit. That's just my opinion.
Well, I guess, again, to be fair to everybody, the market has changed significantly and we didn't change with it.
Right.
So what's the right amount of change? You know, that's where I think the conversation has to be, and we figure out where we want to go. So we just raised it as a significant issue that we think we should address, and we want to see what the appetite is for that.
Which member of our board has the Public Works group?
Dave,
Okay,
he
cool.
enjoys it so much.
Good. Mental note for follow-up. Yes.
I was just gonna ask, I'm assuming you guys will talk about other towns around here, such as Franklin or Millis, that do this already.
Most of them are on the bags, using
Right.
bags rather than stickers.
Yeah.
Some of them are charging less for the bags, and if we switch out bags for stickers, we'll probably be on the high end of that. You know, should you have everyone pay for a decal to use the station? Right now, we've really only been charging that to people who come in and use it for trash. Should you have to get a decal to have access to the stuff we sell? You know, is that something?
Well, I would think you would charge more for the bags because now the person doesn't have to actually buy trash bags as well. Before, you bought a sticker to stick on your own trash bags that you were purchasing.
Good point.
And now you're getting the bag and the sticker
Yeah.
for the same.
So we're gonna have
Now you don't have to buy bags.
So if anyone wants to tune in, we're giving them a PowerPoint presentation on Tuesday night about this. So lots to learn.
Very good, thank you. Continuing along the sheet.
Next big item, other departmental revenue. We're increasing that from 125 to 150. The trend on other departmental revenues, which is basically all departments, whether they're getting the miscellaneous checks or town clerk's office with dog license fees, things of that sort. So those revenues that are received by the different departments throughout the town, the trend has been a little bit higher, so we're moving that up to 150,000.
did you skip fees, or is it, there's a line of like the 20,000?
Fees is flat at 20,000 from the
And what
previous
is
year.
part of, what's in the fees?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to get you back the detailed information, because I don't
Okay.
recall specifically.
Okay.
Let me find out. Lease and maintenance, that's the public safety building. We have an agreement with the regional dispatch center for two items. One is the lease of the facility itself, which is $50,000 base year and 3% incremental each year thereafter. And then we have a maintenance agreement with them that is a $36,000 base fee, 3% per year after that. Factoring in the 2 years brings that amount to $90,000 of revenue that we'll be receiving from them. License and permit fees, that's a building department that requires the electrical permits, building permits, mechanical permits, all those different permits from the building department. That trend has been on the upwards as well, so we've moved that up another $25,000 to $440,000. Fines and forfeits, tax collector's office, $20,000 revenues from there. Investment income, well, past couple of days, I don't know. They have to adjust this down a little bit, but gonna keep it flat for the moment. We're not really exposed heavily into anything that's of great significance in trading volume as far as our investments. They've been doing pretty well throughout the past few years. Meals tax, that's thanks to all the different restaurants in town. We'll keep that at about $85,000, similar to last year. Ambulance receipts, we increased that, a couple different reasons. We have the monies in ambulance receipts available. We've done a review of increasing the fees for ambulances, and then also couple that with looking at the software that's being utilized and the software, or the vendor that helps with the processing for the receipts. We think we can minimize that expense as well, which is on the expense side, but we're kind of figuring that out and not 100% sure we'll have it up by first of the year, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the increase on ambulance receipts, or the increase that we will receive. Where is that coming from exactly? Is that the person taking the ambulance ride,
It is.
what they're
Yes.
getting charged?
Yes, we significantly raised the rates in November, and we've already seen those start to tick up. We had been charging quite a low amount compared to our surrounding communities, and we had broken our rate out so that we had a base rate, and then depending on what you needed on your ride, you charged other things, and we found that the trend was to combine it and charge a higher amount overall, and so that's been going well. And then and we can.
As someone that took an ambulance ride from the town, did not go well for me.
I'm sorry.
I'm saying, that's what I was curious about in terms of if it's comparable, because it was very expensive. It took me over almost a year to pay back the town for the ambulance ride for something that was not horribly significant. And they did an awesome job, right? So I just was wondering about if we were kind of in the same ballpark as other towns.
Yes, I mean, we can get you that information because we did collect it as we made our decision.
Right.
I would also point out to people, because not everybody realizes this, you probably do, that and the only time we can get paid is if we transport. So if
Right.
we go to someone's house and they say,
No, thanks.
thank you, but I'm all set, I'm going
Yeah.
to take myself, that is something that we absorb. Thank you, good
Yeah.
word. And then, as Todd said, looking at the changing companies to one who is going to be more diligent about collections where appropriate, but we're also very sensitive to hardships.
Right.
And working those out with people is, I think, going to be, help our bottom line as
Yeah,
well.
thank you. I know that obviously medical bills are a source of pain for a lot of people of all income levels, so just wanted to make sure we had thought
Sure.
about that as
Yep.
we thought about increasing fees.
Yep.
Yep, and while we were doing the research for the increasing of the fees, even though we raised the fees, we're still lower than some of the surrounding communities,
Yep.
even at the raised rates currently, so.
Great. Thank you for considering it.
Yeah, of course. It helps, it's going to help balance the 9.3% increase in the fire budget
Mhm.
by, adding the 2 positions we're getting through a grant. It helps balance this out a little bit.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Miscellaneous recurring receipts, it's just miscellaneous items that kind of come in throughout the year for various different things. And the trend has been about $25,000. Miscellaneous non-recurring, that's the prison mitigation. Currently, we received, I think last year was 256, 255, 256, off the top of my head. And it's been around that range, so we're budgeting in years past. You can see we budgeted a little bit lower amount. Lower amount obviously would be, at the end of the year, utilized for additional monies towards free cash. Any questions?
That's essentially the state pilot for the posting of prisons.
For the prison, yes. Prison
I
mitigation.
mean, it's
And
not
is it-
absolutely guaranteed.
No, I understand that. Is there a House budget out yet?
No.
Was it in the governor's budget at this rate, or?
I've not heard.
When I talked with our rep, he said he felt that at this point, he saw no reason to take it out.
Okay.
But, you're right to point out that it's something to keep our eye on.
Okay.
I have a question. I know, so this is all based on experience, so we're not saying actuals on the top part. I'm just curious why,
I didn't bring the actual sheet.
it just strikes me as, we've talked about it before, but the actuals are always, I know that's where your numbers are coming from. You looked at what you did last year. So I think both numbers are helpful.
Sure.
Sure.
I guess it wasn't a question, it's a comment.
We can send that out as a spreadsheet, so you'll see the past.
Like, we looked at a 4-year average on building permit fee, and we actually went a little lower than what the actual average of those 4 years would be, because we didn't want to overstate anything, but, yeah, we both looked at that as we developed this.
Without doubt, it just leaves a
Sure.
question mark that I
Sure.
know that you guys have answered.
The next section, which is the cherry sheet, this is the state funds that we received. For FY '21, that's preliminary, that's what they're anticipating on giving us. You'll notice that it is down from FY '20. FY '20 actually, when we did our budget, was based on $4,279,080 and the total there. When it was finalized, it was actually $4,275,000 and like 900 or something like that, I believe. Because the FY '21 budget for the all-in at the state level was just a few $100s short this year as compared to the final numbers from last year. But when we do the budget, we have to kind of put a number in there, and then when we vote the budget, because they didn't give us the final budget from the state last year until after our vote at the town meeting. Their budget wasn't finalized until July. So that's why you'll see the difference number. It looks like a $4,000 drop, but it's only a couple $100 in total from what our final was. But this is budget to budget.
The actual.
So the frustrating thing here is that the governor's budget included a 2.8% increase in lottery number, and you see it there. But the big change is the charter school tuitions that went up by about 6 kids going to the Franklin school. We're receiving almost $100,000 less. So at the end of the day, we were really flat on a place where, when we did our very early projection, we were looking at a potentially 2% increase, because we had no idea that more kids were enrolling in the charter school than we had been told. So, and we do receive charter school reimbursement.
Well, it's going from 3,000 to 72,000.
Yeah, I can't completely explain.
$69,000.
I can't completely explain this formula, but the basic premise behind it is the state recognizes that if kids who are going to Norfolk are now going to a charter school, there's still some fixed costs the district has to run the bricks and mortar school, and so they have this formula that even though they're charging you so they can pay the charter school for the kids who are going there, they're giving you some money back for what they say are your costs to still operate the buildings that you have and some of the people that you have. I can't enunciate for you how the formula works, but that's what the intent is behind it. So you're charging you here and giving you a little back over there.
Thank you again.
I'm sorry.
But the 72 represents the fact that it jumped so much was the fact that we also have 4 more kids that we didn't expect. Was that the idea?
We have 6 more.
6 more.
6 more kids, so.
District.
And what, they're charging us for the tuition to send them to that school, but then they're giving us a little back for our costs that that don't just go with the kid.
How much are they charging us?
About
If we're
15
giving us
15
72,
15 and change.
About 15,000 or so a kid.
what's the net difference between the 72 they're giving us and what we're paying them? Where's that?
We've got these as totals, we can get you the cherry
$15,000.
sheet.
If you think it's 15, about 15, but they're giving us a little less than $15,000 less than what we need, so.
So they're giving almost all of it back.
Sort of.
Not quite, but anyway, overall, you would usually expect to see a small increase in state aid, and we're not getting it.
Okay.
So, there's that.
And finally, free cash. Based on the preliminary revenue that we did, it was 100,000. Running through some of the finalized numbers,
How about that?
that number actually is now at
87.
97,559.
What happened with the cemetery?
That's my question.
25, 25, 70, 0.
No one's gonna die.
Not a good source to be trying to balance a budget with revenue
But it
from,
is a source though, right?
it's not a sustainable source.
We had a conversation, was
Yeah,
it a
the
year
taxes,
ago?
I've always heard.
Yeah, but we had a conversation, was it last meeting or the year before for the budget meeting where we were trying to decide if we should be out of the cemetery business, because it's just, the costs are more than what it brings in.
Will there be a number in that box when you get to their actual at the end of the year?
We're not recommending we use any of it
Okay.
because we're actually gonna be heading in a direction of deciding whether we wanna continue to be in the cemetery business and purchasing land or making more cemetery space available. So to use any monies we bring in from the cemetery seems that's not necessarily gonna continue to grow was not a responsible thing. And overall, our goal was to try to, the town has had it's been on a good glide path to reduce its dependence on non-recurring revenues. And so we were trying to bring the 233 down to something less, and we're just under 100 now overall to be a balanced budget. And so, I mean, 70 might have just been a number that was available last year. I walked in, 3 weeks before? But I think we're smarter not to do that, whether we stay in the cemetery business or not.
Right. Anything it does make should stay in its own budget so that it can pay its own expenses. But I don't really see how, I obviously know nothing about the cemetery business, I'll be the first one to say it, but I don't see how it's a moneymaker. Some of those places, let's say you pay $10,000 for a place to be, what do they call them, a plot? But you're there for 450 years, so how is that a moneymaker for the town?
It's not.
David's questioning, I think you maybe
I've
think
been told forever that being an undertaker is the most lucrative thing in the world.
Yeah, but
The undertaker,
That's
not,
funerary services, that's different from the graveyard.
that's different from the actual land. You buy the
Funeral home is
land, you
different.
can only bury one person in it.
I'm not trying to make light of this, just I'm having, I'll defer.
It's an important
The funerary
conversation to
home
have
is
someday.
Very good. Any other questions about revenues? You covered what you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the House and Senate versions of the budget haven't come out. Can't say that they
Right.
would change it all for us, but
Questions?
A statement more than a question. I have a lot of concerns about some of these estimates for FY21 being based on what actuals were for these past years. Some of these things are recession-proof, like you need an ambulance, you're gonna need one next year, same as you needed one this year. But a lot of these other things are gonna be affected, right? So new growth, right? People aren't gonna be doing as much development, I think is fair to say. Meals tax, people aren't gonna be going out to eat quite as much. Lottery, maybe, things will work both ways. People will be buying more scratch tickets, right? So there's going to be, more people use the transfer station and stop paying for curbside pickup, right? So there's going to be an ebb and flow. But I think on the whole, if we are expecting growth in the new growth area, we're expecting flat for motor vehicle excise taxes. People are going to keep their old cars running longer and be paying less rather than going to buy new cars and bumping that stuff up. I think there's a lot of overestimations here that entering into the start of what could be a prolonged recession. I don't think it's not egregious to say that keeping some of these things flat from where they've been is a risk. I think we're overestimating a lot of these receipts based on economic forecasts.
If you were to look at the prior years that overlap with recessions, would that perhaps be a better benchmark to model against, as opposed to just the last 3 or 4 contiguous years? Something to think about.
Unfortunately, I think this was done before there was a recession. I mean, recession's 3 days old.
No, I mean the
Yeah,
last
so-
recession.
No, I know, but I'm saying that they didn't know this coming in.
new growth is not just what someone does to their home, it's also some of the projects that are on the, like the Enclave is just about to start of 40 new homes. There are 40B projects that will contribute to new growth.
Right, but when
My-
2008 happened and those people were building, they literally
They
stopped building.
Right, I think.
And left them halfway
That's
done
my
and
point.
empty.
Yeah, we
Paid
need to
for
be
the building
prepared that
permits
some
at
of
that point.
the projects we're expecting aren't gonna happen the way that we're expecting them to. They'll either stop or get scaled back or something to that effect. The licenses and permits, right, we're expecting to grow. People aren't gonna be adding on additions to their house this upcoming year. Again, the excise tax, I'd be curious to know how many new cars were registered last year, and we're kind of
We
expecting
haven't
that to.
changed that, I mean, we have to look at we didn't bring the report that shows us what it actually was, but we're not projecting to increase it.
No, I understand, but I would say I would project that to decrease, right? Is everyone who bought a new car this past fiscal year, fast forward 6 months and then be like, yeah, maybe I don't need a new car, maybe I can continue to pay the $50 excise tax on my beater car for another couple of years as opposed to going out and getting a new one. I would expect something like that, the permits, certainly, the new growth. There are some significant chunks there that I think we're overestimating by expecting these things to either be flat from last year or to grow. So my concern is just we are gonna run into we will set the budget based on these estimates and find ourselves with a very real shortfall next year, and then start figuring out what gets cut to fill the gap.
I mean, I think the same way you do, but I think that this is completely unknowable. It's unknowable, and I mean, I think about sort of the pressure on the expense side that there already is. I don't know what the levers are. Let's say, this gets approved, mid-May, everything bottoms out. Like, how do we, even though the budget's been approved, how do we go back and say, oh my gosh, like, these things aren't going to happen? Are there controls that you have outside of, we've already blessed the budget? How do
You
we
could make
sure
changes at the fall town meeting, you could reduce expenses then, you could choose to use, free cash you hadn't used now because you saved it.
How much do we have in free cash?
645? 645 right now?
Yeah.
Do you have enough to cover the
That's
costs?
600,000, 6 million?
645,000.
Okay.
Do you have enough to cover the cost of, well, I shouldn't say that because you can't know that, but with the expectation that this drama surrounding the virus continues at the current state that it is, do you have the money available to continue to clean and to pay facilities overtime to do these things at the same rate that you are right now for the next 6 months? Because that could very well be how long, well, you're in summer at that point, but you know what I'm saying, through the rest of the school year. Because if not, you're gonna have to, I would assume, have to use free cash for that, because the budget for this year was already done. You don't have it in the budget, so you're gonna have to get the money from somewhere. Can't deficit spend that, so, you may very well be using all of the free cash to cover the costs that we might be here in August transferring. You know what I'm saying? Not just for the schools, it could be for the town. I mean, at some point, it's gonna come down to all of these buildings are gonna have to be cleaned.
Matt has not raised to either of us, I don't believe, an issue that he's running into an overtime problem to do this. So I can't tell you that there will be one. I mean, other factors, knock on wood, it looks like we're gonna get through this winter with not overspending the snow and ice budget, which we did last year by $230,000. Right. So, there's good news and there's things to keep an eye on. I always approach a budget revenue side with not wanting to overstate things, because if anything, it's, if you can understate them in some way, then you can look to grow free cash a little bit to be better prepared for things like this. So, I mean, your points are well taken. We should continue to look at these. We're not at the end yet. There are some things that we still are waiting to see how work out in the budget. I mean, I think Norfolk likes to see the King Philip budget be what it needs to be for students, but we can't know right now where our sister towns are in passing that budget, and will that impact our expenses?
Of this 41 million estimated, do you know how much of it you're spending? All of it? Or will there be some left over?
Well, the revenues will match the expenses, yes.
Okay. Well, these are projected.
Right.
So you're projecting that the budget for next year is going to be 41 million.
But to say
What
there's-
in here is gonna add up to, what will be in here is gonna add up to 41.
Yes,
One
but I
top
say the
of it.
selectmen have to talk about the transfer station, they have to talk about whether or not they want to change the retiree health insurance contribution. We adopted a policy to offer people incentive not to take our health insurance We're gonna be rolling those letters out this month and hoping that that helps us reduce our health insurance costs further next year by people who can buy it elsewhere and get paid a small amount not to take it. So some things we're still waiting to hear about that will roll out in the next, couple of weeks.
So the points to me that resonate, I appreciate the fact that we're not in a recession, to David's point, but the point also that there's a huge amount of uncertainty in markets. We have entire industries that are already seeing early impacts of travel and vacation and such. So part of me thinks, okay, so on the one hand, being conservative seems to be responsible. If we're so conservative to the point of then introducing service cuts, maybe are there capital things that we can delay? Like, how are you able to attenuate, given, if you're keeping an eye on something, does that still leave us some ability to attenuate, not have some horrible situation 6 months from now when we're talking about significant, contingency fund spending or whatnot? I mean, is this making sense?
Right, well, we're gonna know by the end of June where we are on new growth. And this budget doesn't include any capital items because the town typically takes care of those in the fall. So, our goal is we don't spend any more than we need to in free cash at the annual town meeting to balance this budget. We roll, or any transfers that we need. We're gonna roll as much as we can into the free cash calculation for next year. And that will help us deal with any, if something doesn't come to pass, so we have to tighten up, there's a better ability to do that. Or there's ability to continue to pick away at our capital budget and take care of some of those things that we typically do in the fall.
Okay.
I'm just curious, is anybody here back in '08? What did we do and?
I moved here that year.
I don't know what happens. I mean, if everything falls out, what do we do?
So back then, there was, I can't say I can speak to what happened townwide, but from a school's perspective, there was a lot of cuts there. That was when foreign language, I believe, got cut. The music program got scaled back from the elementary schools. There was some significant changes in the schools in 2008.
I mean, we would approach unions probably for concessions or look at layoffs, if something significant didn't happen or
Some of the
changed.
departments upstairs lost
Yeah.
like 1 or 2 people.
Yeah.
Because there's not a whole lot to lose.
There's-
The land boards went from 3 administrators to 2, and then ultimately 1 kind of thing.
Again, I'm not a financial expert by any means, but the the recession in '08 was housing driven more than this recession is going to be. That recession was a housing bubble that burst, so I don't think we're at a housing bubble burst quite yet. So I don't think we're going to see the massive home foreclosures and
Well, that's part of
things
why
like that. So, but that doesn't mean that people are going to stop spending. I mean, today we finished in a bear market, so we're down. We're down 20% in 2 days.
This is a fluid
So,
document, so
yeah.
we're always monitoring this. This is not like set in stone until it's voted on at town meeting. There's always changes up and down, so, I mean, we continue to monitor, just like we're continuing to monitor for the coronavirus. We're gonna monitor the budget. I mean, we gotta wait for the state. We gotta make sure that the schools are where they're gonna be, and so far they are. But right now, we have a balanced budget at these amounts that we're comfortable at, given the facts and circumstances that are made aware to us now.
And you believe that as trends express themselves over the next few months, that we'll have
We
time
can
to
adjust.
compensate by
Yep.
town meeting?
Yeah.
Correct.
And we have, this past, the FY20 budget was a 4.2% increase. Right now, we're tracking at 2.33. I mean, we're trying to bring in a more responsible budget. I'm not saying this current year's was irresponsible. I'm just saying, the message that we've gotten is, let's tighten up a little bit here. And that's what we've been trying to do.
And even the last month, you guys went from like 3 point something to 2.8, right? So
We originally modeled 3.07 as what we think we could afford, and some things have come true and some things have not. Health insurance was a little less, the state revenue was a little less.
School is more.
Schools more, Norfolk was, King Philip wasn't. So we put all that into here, and again, we've got a couple things we don't know yet. And,
So going back to fiscal year 2007, they presented a balanced budget of $27,529,000. In 2008, for fiscal year 2009, they came back with a increase of 5.66, but that was with a Prop 2.5 override of $500,000 or $414,000. 2010, the budget went down 0.5%. 2011 went back up, but that was with a Prop 2.5 override of $1,067,000. So unfortunately, that was the trying times in order to make things happen. That increased the tax base on a permanent basis going forward. But like I said, trying to be responsible at 2.33% increase.
Any other questions about our ability to adapt over the next few months before we get to the budget itself?
we'll get you the history. I think that's very helpful, I agree. And we'll keep
Keep one of
looking
the
at these.
actuals, right?
That's
If you have them.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
no space, sir.
Any other questions about revenue? Questions about revenue? Okay, thank you both very much. Very helpful. Now the budget process, do you want to maybe speak a little bit to the overall budget, not necessarily just revenues, but just next steps? So the select board is meeting next week.
They are, we're gonna
To-
give them both sides of the equation of this budget, and go over some of the major changes, and, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that last week we looked at, you gave them 2.8, this next week we're gonna give them 2.33, so I'm hoping we're in a good place. But it is dependent on some important things. Transfer station, retiree health is about $120,000 of this decrease. So if that didn't happen, then, and they don't want to do that, or something less than that, then we'll have to go back to the drawing board and see what else we can adjust.
Which gets us, I believe, to how do we set ourselves up so we can ask questions
Mhm.
about the departments
Mhm.
that are making changes to realize the budget percentages that you're talking about.
Mhm.
So like a 2.3, 2.8, wherever it lands. As people tighten their belts, I think we're going to have questions about how that was achieved.
Right.
And not the revenue side.
Yeah, I understand.
Right, so any senses, Susan or others, about how to structure this? I mean, if you had any conversations about?
No, so I think we need to wait until we have a final budget, because we won't know if there's cuts made that you might want to bring department heads in specifically to speak about, so.
I mean, we could send you at the end of the week, beginning of next, what we're giving the select board, or you can look at in their packet and see what that's made up of. But we need their guidance on whether whether they want to go ahead with those.
Okay.
And then again, we don't know where we'll end up exactly with King Philip. We don't know exactly where we'll end up with people opting out of health insurance. So those are things that could change towards the end. I think the most significant change to department budgets right now would be in DPW. And we have made adjustment to police downwards a little bit. We haven't touched fire, we haven't touched either of the school budgets.
Okay.
So the DPW would be on the block, is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't characterize it as on the block. I mean,
They're impacted.
Negatively.
Well,
it's a philosophy about how to structure the department, and whether or not, how many people we need in management positions at the top to manage the organization. When we have been in a position to have, someone retire, we haven't replaced that person yet. So
I'm gonna ask a dumb question. Is there a new DPW commissioner?
there is not yet,
Okay, fine.
working on that.
Would it
So,
be
I
worthwhile,
thought I missed it, I wanted to make sure.
you did not miss it.
would it be worthwhile for us to go ahead and schedule a meeting that includes DPW on the 18th of next week? Or is that too early after the select board?
I think it's a little early. I'd like to see where the board is on what we present to them.
So Susan, how many meetings do we have between now and when the warrant goes out?
So the warrant is scheduled to go out April, hang on, I have.
21st.
21st.
Well, signed on the 21st.
Signed on the 21st, so we have one next week, the following week,
4, right?
and then we have the 1st of April, the 8th of April, and the 15th, and that will leave us 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th.
The 15th wouldn't leave us for presentations, though, at least not historically, that's when we would vote on
Right, we
everything. So
can't-
we can't
right.
have presentations on the 15th.
So we really have 3 meetings.
Yeah,
Which is why I'm trying to be a little
that's what I'm saying.
forward-leaning here, because I just don't want to run out of
Well,
time.
because
Why
this
don't
is
we do the
vacation
schools
week and
next
they
week?
need 2 weeks to print.
We can.
So we have to do it this week and then
Because
they
they're
have 2 weeks to
done.
print.
They voted their budgets,
So
right?
next week's too early because select board hasn't voted
Have the
yet.
school,
So we have,
have the, is the Kingfield vote their budgets?
yeah.
They have.
Why don't we have them next week?
Yeah.
As best we
Well, they
can.
haven't technically been approved by the
But they
select
don't
board
have to
yet.
be approved. It's up or down. They know what's in their budget.
So I know the school superintendent is out at a conference in Washington next
Why
week.
is he out at a conference in Washington?
He's gonna catch something.
I'm deadly serious about that.
I'm not his mom, I don't.
Well, we saw what happened the last conference in Washington.
Can I
But you
call
said he's
him on the
planning on being at a
Kingfield School
conference, or is
Committee
that
and
a
tell him to
conference?
stop him from going to
That's
Washington?
Mikey canceled.
Oh my
All
God.
I understand, I believe me, I've talked to him a lot. in the
He's
last
gone right
couple
now,
days.
right?
No, he's here,
Oh, okay.
but this was a conference that is pre-planned and they decided because of what they would lose in having committed to this, that they were going, so that's what I know.
They may not
Can
be
we
then.
take a vote on whether that's a real
Yeah.
smart decision or not? Actually, just if I may sidebar for a moment, are there any requirements for attendees at town meeting? In all seriousness?
What do you mean?
Like
Like a quorum, you mean?
quorum, a
We
number
don't
of
have, we
people?
don't have a quorum
A number of people
requirement
are
at the
required?
meeting.
So, in all seriousness, we're putting all these votes and all these articles and the budget
And no one may show
in the
up.
hands of like the 3 people who may show up. So, in all seriousness, there needs to be some kind of contingency
Well, we all
for
show up.
for the entire thing.
Well,
We all
the
did.
moderator can do, as an emergency, change the date of the meeting, and I did get an email from him that that's possible. We haven't,
Changing the date by like 3 days isn't, I mean, you may need to change town meeting by months.
well, that becomes a state issue if nobody can have a town meeting. That's a bigger issue than just
I
one of us.
understand, but I think this is a fair thing to talk about, because as things are currently trending, we should expect that this will be an issue, and whether or not we choose to hold town meeting on that day, there most certainly will be attendance issues or lack thereof. So, fine, we decide to go ahead with town meeting, and whoever comes, comes. Even if we go ahead with that, the things we want to pass will be at significant risk if there's 3 people in the audience, all of whom say, we're not doing any of this stuff, right? So despite best efforts and planning and how logical the budget may be and all of these kinds of things, I think we need to understand what a contingency, we need to define a contingency plan now
Can I-
for this.
Maybe this is just crazy talk, but can the contingency plan be that we have it outside? If you're outside, you're way less likely to, the germs are not in the room. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's May, it's warm enough. Can we have it outside
This is very,
somewhere?
very much, I believe, the purview of the moderator.
Yes.
Let's just reach out to Jay.
So he did send an email that said that there has been talk, that there potentially could be some issues with town meetings, and that there would be some emergency orders issued by the governor that would allow town moderators to not hold town meetings, to move town meetings, and to do some very necessary things that might have to take place even if we don't hold town meeting.
Okay.
So the person that's working on that, I think, is in tune with the right people, and I know that he copied the chair, Kevin Calcutt, and Blythe, and I think Art.
I don't know that I was in that one. but
Okay, I'll send it
double
to you so you have
Thank
it.
you.
So it
It's
is,
a really good
it is
thing that
something
one
that
isn't trying
paying
to spring because that
particular
would
attention to.
take hours.
Thank you.
I will share what I am provided at the next meeting, so we can talk about that too. I appreciate the fact that Jay and others are being proactive about this.
So I agree.
I see Kevin shaking his head too.
If you say the school's
Yeah.
budget isn't gonna change, then we should have the schools.
The goal is to get as many people to town meeting as possible, right? So we're not gonna force a town meeting with the intent to have as many people there as show up just to have town meeting. The goal is to have as many people there as possible. So if there is a chance that there's gonna be decreased attendance because of this issue, it'll definitely be accounted for. Whether we have to move town meeting a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever the case, Jay is way ahead of the ball of trying to coordinate with the other town moderators to find out what we're gonna do as a whole.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we said 3 meetings left
So
potentially.
the problem with having the schools next week, I think, as Blythe said, is he is scheduled to go on a conference. He
Okay.
may not, that conference may not take place. I certainly can send an email to Ingrid and, Ingrid, Dr. Alardi, and Dr. Zinni.
Is there a deputy who could present, or at least the finance director?
Perhaps Larry can, I just don't know.
If we could just ask, I think that would be helpful. We don't have very many meetings left. Yes, Sue?
No, I was saying yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. So deputy
Only
is
because
fine.
they have, I'm not saying it's not important for them to come and present to the advisory, that is our role, but technically, both of them have presented their budget. So if we were to need to, we could just, we wouldn't be able to ask questions, and I get that. We wouldn't have the ability to ask those questions, but we could go watch their budget presentation, because they were both recorded.
Which is something that I believe we should
Yeah.
encourage. I encourage everyone to.
I mean, I went to
the.
I didn't go to the KP one, but I went to the Norfolk one and I asked the questions that I had, so. But that doesn't mean that they don't still need to present to advisory and that we don't have the opportunity to
Right.
ask. I'm simply saying if it comes down to not being able to move forward because we don't have the information or going and watching it, let's watch it.
Well, and trying to
that's-
be
if that's the
mindful
lesser
of
the
what's
evils.
going on right now
Yeah.
and not knowing what direction we're heading in. Let's hope we're all sitting here next Wednesday, but there's no guarantees right now. So I think that whichever department that you are a liaison to, I think it would probably be very beneficial, even if we do end up having those department heads in, for you to watch the Saturday budget presentation that they gave to the select board, just because you'll be better informed, and if we do potentially run into some crunch time with meeting schedules, you will have at least seen their presentations.
This is the February 8th meeting
Yes.
on YouTube?
Yes.
Check it out.
February 8th.
It's favorited.
And you can kind of scroll through quickly until you get to your particular presenter, but everybody presented that day. And whatever departments didn't present, Blythe and Todd presented on their behalf. So I think that as kind of a backup plan, it's probably a good idea for everybody to do that.
I think it's just good due diligence anyway. Just I've been watching the fire presentations, which has been very helpful, and DPW, which I think you'll like. David, yes.
I watched part of it.
Go ahead.
I guess just a question then, like, let's just say we're not able to reach a quorum, like, is there a way for us to Skype someone in and have that count as a quorum?
No, because the select board had that vote, correct? And you guys said, no, we
No
can't
to
call
remote.
in.
Right.
It didn't pass, correct?
Correct.
We cannot call in. It was brought up
About
a
6
month
weeks
ago. Yeah, about a month ago, and it didn't pass for whatever reason.
Could we ask what the
I
reason
bet,
was?
I bet in hindsight, that probably wasn't the.
We're not allowed to ask for the reason?
Hindsight's 2020 now that there's a deadly virus going
On
around.
the agenda.
Yeah.
As one of the people that proposed that agenda item.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, now that there's a virus going around that prohibits meeting in public places, I think that being able to Skype in probably would have been the smart thing to vote yes on.
There are legal issues that need to be
Yeah.
considered. Public meeting issues that can be overcome.
That's true.
Yeah, I think even the best case would have been that quorum still would have had to be in person, but that people above quorum could call in. And that's based on state, if I recall correctly, state law.
Okay.
If this gets worse, I mean, just playing devil's advocate, if this gets worse, no committees, groups, are going to be able to meet.
Yep.
So all the stuff's gonna, I mean,
No, you're right.
all the school trips have been canceled. My daughter couldn't even have a.
Kevin, myself,
can't
and
even
Jerry
have a
will
Girl
stay in
Scout
touch
meeting.
as things unfold. If we get to that point, we will share what we think the plan is. But we are still planning on meeting next Wednesday for the school presentation. Are there any other agenda items you want to include in that? Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about library. I'm liaison, and I know that they initially had been a bit on the chopping block as well, so do you know where that is looking like at this point for library budget?
Status quo.
Status quo, okay.
But, which, by the way, in 2008, they were down to 4 days a week, and 2 of them were 4-hour days, so something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
That was.
I mean, we did identify in the February 8th workshop that, we had to get to 0. It was closing on Saturdays in the summer, Sundays year-round, and technology. We haven't pulled that trigger to reduce the budget,
Okay.
given where we are. But one of the things we have taken out of the overall town budget is the part-time IT person, which does concern me a little bit.
And that was for the library specifically?
No, it's not for the library,
Okay.
but I had a conversation with the library director, say, look, I may need more help from your IT person if I'm reducing or limiting this position
Got it.
here.
Which departmental discussion would that be a part of?
IT, it's its own little department or something that,
So we'll make a note to bring that up when,
Yep.
I just want to make sure that we talked about
Yep.
revenues tonight. As we have expense discussions, I think it's trade-offs like that that I think we would be interested in
So are
knowing a
you
lot more
asking for
about.
library to present to us?
Well, it sounds like library may not need to present if they're status quo, but if something shifts dramatically.
I believe,
they
I
might
watched
be-
the library presentation when I went. I was not able to be there all day Saturday. He was there longer than I was, so he might be able to
Yeah.
ascertain more
meeting
information.
with Libby
I
on
was there
Friday,
for
so-
some of it, and I believe what they did was they cut a pay increase for one person to be able to maintain the same level hours, correct? Is that what they did?
yes.
So
But
that
the
person
getting to a
agreed to-
zero did mean some other things. but
Right,
we're
that
not-
person agreed to a non-cost of living increase, and there were some other things they were able to bring down to not have to close the library. That was in their proposed budget, and then they had the zero budget, which had all the closures.
Yes. And I'm meeting with Libby, the director, on Friday, so I can ask anything I want to
Mm-hmm.
get clear on to bring to
Nice.
this group if we don't.
Thank you,
determine.
Grant.
Yeah. And there's just those changes that I think, like I thought the Saturday workshop was fantastic. It's where did we wing
End
it?
up.
Like what changed?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people were interested in that, a lot of people watched it. I don't know that a ton of people went for the amount of people that were actually interested in it. But unfortunately, we don't know what the outcome was. As far, we do, because we're on advisory and you're presenting to us, but the town does not know the outcome of each individual department until town meeting. So
But
they don't
that's-
necessarily know if they want to come to support or come to oppose.
So
That's the
this,
only
so,
problem.
for anyone watching, I would say, look at the select board's posting, either full agenda packet that we'll be putting up Thursday night, because it's gonna have all these details in it.
For Thursday night, too.
Yep, and, then we'll get an answer, we'll get some guidance from them about they're comfortable with this and the things that they would need to do to carry this out, or not. Because if they're not, then we're gonna have to look at some other adjustments, like maybe back to the library. We haven't gone to zero in departments. We have made some selective reductions, but we haven't overall gone to that. And we tried to preserve the two school budgets where the schools had to certify.
The meeting on the 8th has no thumbs up votes on YouTube. I'm going to give it its first. Boom.
I
Oh, I'm going to go offline, that's why it says zero. Maybe I should have some. I'm not connected. Oh,
I'm just curious about the healthcare contribution, the employee healthcare contribution. Can you talk,
Bane of my existence, that right
really?
there.
Can
Oh, yes.
can I understand what the change was? Or the
So-
proposed change?
So currently, the town contributes 65% of the cost for our full-time, employees who are eligible for insurance who are working. And then when they retire, the town has been contributing the same 65% of the cost of either their Medicare supplement plan or their regular plan if they're not Medicare eligible for some reason. There are approximately 137 people or employees, 137 people. They may not all be employees, they may be employees and former employees and their spouses in some cases. The state law requires, if you accepted it, and we did, that you pay a minimum of 50% of the cost. And Norfolk, at some point, chose to have the retirees be the same as the current employees. So the choice before the board is to reduce that, and we can do that. It would have a positive effect on the next year's budget and each budget thereafter. We think the reduction would be about $120,000 in FY '21.
I'm sorry, this is non-Medicare eligible.
So, for
retirees.
example,
Or the whole.
so people who retire before age 65 and are not eligible to go on Medicare?
Yeah.
Or people who never worked enough years, enough quarters that are to be Medicare eligible and could never join it.
Okay.
We have 15 of those, family plans, single plans, individual plans, roughly. The majority of them are on Medigap plans. They cost about $325 a month. So right now, the town's paying 65% of each one of those, and the choice could be to pay 50.
I see.
So the savings is in lowering what the town contributes.
Yeah.
In the near term, that's $120,000 this year and more in the succeeding years. The other difference it makes is to help lower the overall OPEB liability, because if you're contributing less, you're,
Exposure goes down.
so if our valuation says we are gonna need to spend 26 million, I'm not an actuary, it's.
Becomes 22 million.
Something less.
Yeah.
The downside, if you're the employee, is if you've already retired and you were paying, $113 a month for your Medigap plan, and now you need to pay $160, these are not exact
Yeah.
numbers, times 12 months a year,
Yeah.
that's, I think we worked out around $500, $550 a year,
And to make sure I'm tracking, so that is these are just for the retirees.
just for the retirees.
So we're not touching the employees.
Those we'd have to negotiate
They're-
with the union, all of the unions. The retirees are not represented by a union.
Yeah.
When the health insurance law changed in 2012, the state had a moratorium for a few years. You couldn't change whatever your percentage was at. That has sunsetted, and so I think it's important for a community like ours to decide, do we want to continue to contribute more, or do we want to go to 50-50? We've we've reached out to a lot of communities, and we've got about 135. We've got answers from about half are 50-50. Some are higher. There's some as high as 80-20.
This is a cool question, but how many of those folks are Norfolk residents? Do we know?
I could not tell you.
No idea. Okay.
Are you still going to put the 25,000 in?
Oh, I would like to grow it. I'd like to find a way to start. 25 was a start, and we need to continue to increase it. We need to work towards that. But I mean, lowering the expense is part of the equation. Because we're carrying all of those in our operating budget now. At some point, as more people retire, my friend Todd retires here someday from Norfolk, and we replace him. So now we're carrying Todd, perhaps his wife,
25.
and then the new Todd, and perhaps their spouse, and that's how it starts to become unsustainable.
Yeah.
So we also talked about the opt-out incentive, so
Mhm.
people can join their partner's
Yep.
plan, and we would give them a flat amount to go
Yep.
do that. That would also take them off of this if they retire, right? So if they
Well,
retire.
they could come back and
they could come back.
retire.
Okay.
They'd have to be back on the plan, and they could come back and do that. But the other thing we need to think about is, in the past, some people have retired, not taken our insurance, gone off and done something else in life, and come back sometime later and want to get back on. And I think we have to talk with the select
How
board.
long do
about-
they have to do that?
It hasn't been
Forever.
Really?
defined, and.
If you were
Okay.
never on the state
you left.
No, if you-
retirement plan?
No, if you didn't choose Norfolk's Medigap plan when you left, you went and did something else. Maybe your spouse had coverage and you went and did that for a few years till he or she retired, and then you come back and call up Norfolk and say, hey, I'm now ready for my retiree health insurance. They were let back in. And so,
I know there's nothing that can be done about it, but this whole thing is just, it drives me insane. This is one of my
So we
big
can-
sticking points with this.
tighten it up,
Yeah.
it's just, it's
But you don't want
sometimes.
people who worked for this town to not have insurance.
Oh, I don't
Right,
have a
like-
problem with us paying for their insurance. I have a problem with us being so far in debt that we're paying 25,000, which is not even a drop in the bucket of the 26 million we're estimated to owe. I think if you're gonna do it, then you do it, right? It's like saying, I've gotta get to $50,000 by next year and I'm gonna start saving 20 cents a day. You're not getting there.
We pay it every year.
Yeah.
But we,
As an employer, Cascade, as an employer, does any of that give you heartburn?
I'm sorry?
Does any of that give you heartburn as an?
Sure it does.
Yes.
I understand what it means to retirees, and so I don't want to minimize that at all. They made choices based on what happened at the time, but I can't, as a town administrator, I can't not put this on the table to say, this is something that impacts future employees, every resident, future residents today, residents tomorrow, and, what we hear is that the state would like to, at some point, pass it, so whatever your percentage is, you're always going to be that, and so I think I have to bring it up, and we make a decision about whether or not it should be changed. So it's a decision of the select board.
How many people would be impacted with the change, 325?
137.
I'm sorry, 137.
Right.
Some of whom may not be town residents.
They may have, well, if they lived in Rentham and never lived here,
Okay,
I'm not arguing.
or they moved out of the area, they lived here, but then they moved, that doesn't matter.
yeah, I understand. Okay.
Yeah.
So 127.
Back up to the schedule, so we are booked for the next,
We hope.
okay, good, next Wednesday. You'll get an email from me if something changes, and Susan, I'm sure.
Yeah, and if KP's superintendent is not comfortable sending just his business manager, then I will just have Dr. Alardi come,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
I'm headed to, well, we're supposed to have a joint three-town select board meeting in Plainville at 6:30. So I
Next Wednesday?
will just be a little bit late.
Okay.
And then the week after is when you, if we're here, we might as well get it on the schedule, is the week after that, after next is when you want, do you
DPW,
definitely
for
want
example.
police, fire, and DPW, or are you gonna,
That's up to
are we
the
gonna go
board.
with, see, normally they don't go to the town and present, so we don't normally have any information, so I wasn't sure if you wanted them, if you actually have, usually it's because we have some
I
questions.
think we would, it's prudent for us to plan on having questions in
Why?
areas that have significant budget impact. And I think there's a high likelihood that DPW is gonna be one of them. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but we'll know more next week.
Yeah, police definitely.
Police potentially
Yeah.
too. So let's, if the appropriate departmental staff are available or around, that would be.
They all know to keep their schedules open, so if you'd like
Not next
them-
Wednesday, but the Wednesday after,
25th.
that would be very helpful.
Yep,
Because we would like to meet then to have appropriate time to understand the trade-offs that are being made and the pros and the cons
yep.
associated with that.
Yep.
And between now and then, if you could watch your respective areas' videos, thanks for folks who've already done that or gone to the meetings, that's extremely helpful. Any other, we don't have any minutes, I think that concludes
Can I
the
ask?
agenda.
Can I ask
David,
a
yes.
Question. As I was sitting here and thinking about the budget versus the revenues, and I may be wrong because I was doing it on my phone, the increase in revenues is about 3.3%, is that the way I read it, something like that? Can we get a sense of what is unnegotiable in that, salary increases, things like that? So therefore, what's the real?
Once it's
So if you look
The
at,
selectmen's packet tomorrow.
What? I
Tomorrow
don't have
night,
it.
when you
I
go
don't
to the
have that
selectmen's package, there'll be a page in there.
Okay.
I'll
Thank
show
you.
you revenue at
you know
the
what, we'll
top,
just email it to you guys.
Yeah, okay,
fixed costs,
all
and
right.
then the discretionary. by-
Yeah, so the same sheet you're used to seeing.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Because it helps think about.
Of course.
2.8 or 2.3 is what you're actually talking about, because that set in stone stuff.
For example, with the school.
Is set in stone.
Sure.
When I went to the school the other night, it roughly works out to about 3% of their budget is where they can make cuts. Unless you're talking about actually firing employees.
Right.
Or laying, I shouldn't say firing, laying off
Laying off
employees.
employees.
Sorry, excuse
Yeah.
me. Laying off employees, that's about the percentage of the budget that would be, what you would consider, hey, let's make some cuts here and here. The rest of it is special ed and salaries, which you can't make cuts to.
Stepping away from the budget for a second and looking at the sheet that was passed out, the draft annual town meeting article list, we seem to have actually a pretty full,
Can someone send me down at least the overview, the spreadsheet?
There you go.
I wrote everything but,
so,
Memorized?
well, yeah, I should, but thanks.
I want to jump to the end, that's a lot of zoning bylaws on there, but do you want to maybe walk us through the highlights of this slide? or what-
Sure,
what your
so the
expectations are?
first 5, 6, 7, 8 9 articles are the same as you usually see.
And we're not planning on having any capital, correct?
Not planning to have a capital. I would point out to you, when you look at the actual warrant, I have suggested that we use the DOR's model for the enterprise funds, because I think it's more informative to the voter of what makes up the budget. Last year, when I noticed when I got here, we had a table, Excel sheet on a PowerPoint, but we could tell the people that earlier, and it's the way the DOR likes to see them pass, so I'm just suggesting that. Number 9, we don't plan to have any capital expenditures from borrowing or from any other source. We'll just, indefinitely postpone those. Number 10, the school is recommending, they have not included in their budget any funds for next year for a out-of-district sped placement. And what they're proposing is that we transfer now at this town meeting, the amount of money that they would be turning back, and we establish a reserve fund so that if there was an out-of-district placement, the money is set aside and it can be voted on by both the school committee, has to be voted on by both the school committee and the select board to take that money out and pay that tuition. So otherwise, if you talk to Dr. Lardy, what she'll tell you is we would increase our budget, it would be more than 4.4% to have that available to us, but they're suggesting we handle it in a different way. Did I get that right? Yeah. Good. Hearing reports is same. Number 12 is a suggestion by the Town Government Study Committee that requires that all warrants be mailed in the future.
Really?
Wait a minute,
What?
I don't like this. 14 days prior?
Well, with a special town meeting, it has to be that, it would have to be
Oh,
because.
special, I'm sorry, I just
okay.
saw the number. I freaked
Quite all
out.
right. I did talk to Jonathan about the fact that he worded it as an advisory board, and I said, haven't changed it yet, but it's advisory committee, so I will fix that in case, I'm sure you'll pick that up.
It's like you don't even know us.
So just a note to that, if that passes, then the advisory committee's budget will need to be
Right.
increased.
Well,
Printing and mailing,
That's the discussion we had.
yes.
I thought we thought that it would be okay as is if we did that.
We have not
We
mailed
don't make
a
that
fall town
decision.
meeting
Right.
warrant in a few years. This board voted to have the ability to choose to do postcards
Okay.
for either. So we have done postcards, which are significantly less expensive than producing 2 warrants and mailing 2 warrants to 3,500 homes.
So, we just need everyone to be aware that it might cost more than we planned, and we'll just have to, but we don't know from meeting to meeting how long the warrant's gonna be. So it's hard to say.
So it's very difficult to pinpoint costs.
Number 13 is the revolving funds. There are some adjustments that we're gonna try and handle in one article. We need to eliminate the snow plowing revolving fund. There's a request by the Board of Health to add a revolving fund for tobacco compliance checks.
Checks,
Yep.
How does that get funded?
By,
the fees that are associated with the 7 businesses that have tobacco.
So it would be,
They receive the
it'd
monies
go
in.
out, it'd go into a this
Revolving
fund
fund.
rather than the general.
Yeah.
Correct.
CPC is there's just the regular articles. Chapter 90 is number 16, accepting grants, sale of property, those are typical articles. Number 19 is to clean up a provision of the zoning bylaw on eliminating the 2-family provision for affordable housing, which I guess was identified a while ago, but for some reason didn't make a warrant. I don't know why, if I've got that correct.
No, it actually wasn't identified until that subdivision that didn't go forward, but there was a subdivision proposed up by Cranberry Meadow, is it?
Cranberry Heights. It's supposed to
Yeah,
be Cranberry Heights.
and they came through the planning board, and in our bylaw, it indicated that a 2-family would be allowed to be built if you had to put 2 affordable units in a development. And they proposed building a home from the outside that would look just like a single family, have 1 driveway, but when you opened the front door, you would go in and there would be 2 separate homes. DHCD would not have allowed that to go onto our subsidized housing inventory. So since it's not an allowed, doesn't mean we couldn't do 2 families in other places. It's not allowed that you can accomplish getting 2 affordable units in a development that way. So it's best to just remove it so that the developers don't think it's still a possibility.
21 through 27 are all related to changes to the C6 zone to perhaps spur something to happen differently with Southwood Hospital. I understand that, I wasn't at the meeting last night, I understand the planning board talked about it. They never intended that all of these would stay on the warrant. It was a matter of if you were gonna go this direction, you might do these, or that direction, you might do those.
These are all the same, a lot of them, I shouldn't say all because I haven't finished reading them. A lot of these are the exact same ones that they're trying to pass for the B1 area.
Sort of.
But-
Well, like 16, this one that says residential dwellings except for God, I can't speak, assisted living, shall not exceed 16. That's one of the that's similar to the one that's on for that. The building footprint shall not exceed 50,000 square feet. That was also one of the ones that was eliminated. We're gonna change it.
Yeah, I don't know if these are gonna, all or some of these will go forward. They're simply here because they've been turned in. I actually said to town council and discussed it with them this afternoon, don't spend a lot of time on these, please, yet, because we need direction from planning about whether they are gonna pull them all or coalesce around a direction.
Understood, but again, we have 3 meetings to talk about this.
Yep.
Or this town meeting might not go as smoothly.
Yeah.
I understand, I'm just telling you what I know.
Is item 20 not C6 though? Item 20 is B1. B1 remove limitation of bedrooms.
I will have to talk
I'm
to.
trying to sneak it
Yeah.
in.
Right.
I will talk to Rich about it.
Right.
I like to stick to the financial articles. That
Right.
makes me
Understood,
more comfortable.
right.
I'm sorry if I missed something obvious. Are all of those B1 changes not gonna be?
No.
No, B1 committee voted to wait until.
It was
fall.
exploratory, it was informative, it's the start of the process.
I'm on the committee now that we couldn't get
Were
it,
you at
we couldn't get it done.
Can you come to me?
I was at the
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah,
we-
I was at the meeting where it was,
They're not ready yet.
where Dedham's failures were
Yeah.
held up as the shining star, what we should.
It is now
replicate.
set to be for fall,
Okay.
which will change if, for some reason, we don't want it to be a special meeting, which I don't know if that, as of right now, it's set to be fall. It will depend on if the
Okay.
work gets done
I didn't know
and
that. Okay.
everyone can agree to move
So
forward.
to have enough time for the advisory committee to evaluate any zoning articles that folks are talking about, I don't think we're ready to say next Wednesday. They have 2 slots left after that.
Okay.
So
I think the planning board
It's
would
gotta be
need
the
to come.
last,
Yeah.
it's gotta be the
Yeah.
last meeting.
One.
My understanding
When
was
they
that this
figure out what
B1
they're-
is supposed to be
Okay.
there. It's about something
By
that's
the
a
way-
potential violation.
Right, that's what
Right,
Sue explained.
Right,
Did
so
anyone-
that is B1, that's not the C6 district.
Anyone else get the Article 29 yet?
So Article 28.
29 is
Oh, very nice. Appointments, okay, as opposed to the
Right, she
moderator.
wants to talk about Article 28.
So, okay, Article 28, please.
Sorry, it's a, this
Street acceptance.
road is ready to be accepted, the subdivision is, built to standard.
Nice.
So
Okay.
it's kind of straightforward in its own way. And then a citizen's petition to require the 2 members of the advisory committee have a financial background that's described in the article.
Surprised it doesn't say what kind of college that the degree is from.
I typed it as I got it.
Thank you.
I mean, some people from Yale would look down at accounting degrees.
I
so-
have
It's an
15 years of
interesting,
experience
we have an
doing it and
interesting
don't have a
dilemma in
degree in
that
it,
case,
so.
because we have to.
Well, it says or.
No, it says and.
It says and.
No, it says and.
Mm-hmm.
The words experience cannot replace education.
I've done my taxes for 4 years, at least.
I'd like to know who's the
Interesting to
citizen
find
that.
out.
You'll find out soon enough.
I can give you guys a copy of the petition.
Great.
I can probably,
I can have a wild guess on who.
I can find him on video for you if you want, so.
I actually understand this. I think that a lot of nonprofit boards actually would like this, but it's really hard to do in practice. You can't even,
Practically, we have a Board of Health that does not require that you have any experience in public health or environmental health or anything.
I like it.
We have a planning board that does not require you have any planning experience.
I say we pass it and all skedaddle.
We also have a select board that says you don't have to have any
Only 2 have to
experience.
leave. I think Brian's first up the door, is that it? Well, now, are there any other towns, I'm curious, whose bylaws have requirements which the moderator must use to appoint either finance committee or advisory committee members?
I haven't studied the topic, but I
Like, is
don't
this done
recall of
anywhere?
any. I don't recall any.
So most towns have 2 committees, one either an advisory board, advisory committee, or a finance committee. If you have a finance committee, most people on that finance committee are gonna have the financial backgrounds typically. Doesn't mean that they have to. Doesn't mean that you don't want somebody else from a different background on the finance committee. We'd have to research to find out if there are other communities that do have requirements. I'm not aware of any off the top of my head.
I'm just curious,
Sure.
custom versus what's actual requirement, because this would actually be a requirement. I don't know if that's ever done.
No, this is a citizen who doesn't like the event.
No, I understand. I'm just wondering if what the citizen is proposing has been done anywhere or been implemented. Maybe this is a Jay question, I'm not sure who, but.
He might have a good sense, he might have a better sense than.
Did you just add the numbers up to get the numbers in orange? Is that, I'm so confused. Is that how math works? Thank you.
Yes.
I don't agree to help with that. That was really confusing.
It also raises a question, should we have a finance committee instead of an advisory?
Right, so that's a different question, right?
Well, that's what this is sort of alluding to, isn't it?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it's not. That was actually what I thought it was actually intended to be, but it was clarified at the select board meeting that this is just intended to include qualifications for appointments to the advisory committee.
But
Why not make
but
it
for example,
flexible?
why only finance?
Like, why don't we need a
See,
planning person? or
why,
don't
yeah,
need
why do we need a developer? Why don't we need,
Not his petition.
He's simply providing information. Thank you, sir.
You know, wait, this is interesting because, I mean, Jay can't ask questions as the moderator, can he?
He can step down from the, having served as deputy moderator for
Okay, there we go.
one article in one session, he can step down to the
We should
floor.
give Jay a nice big heads up that this may
He
make
probably
things
needs
interesting.
to.
from a
Oh,
procedural
I'm sure he
perspective.
knows.
Okay.
He knows.
I'm sure he knows.
Yeah,
And I would like to
He's
say, so that
speaking
it's on
to
the
it.
public record, that Jay actually actively looks for people with different qualifications to enhance the board so that it is similar to the makeup of this town.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
So maybe the citizen would like to ask those questions before, assuming
Okay.
that the person who appoints this board doesn't
Thanks
know
for the
what he's
warrant
doing.
breakdown. There are some things to talk about zoning, obviously. Would love to leave time for that if people feel so inclined to bring the motions forward to be on the warrant. So we'll reserve that for our third meeting. And I guess that's really it. Any other comments about the warrant this year? No?
I think we should put number 29 first and make it effective immediately. So if it passes, we just leave.
I don't know that calendar, so I'm gonna.
Jonathan's trying to-
Like, what do we have to wait till the end of town meeting?
So we're gonna, next
Right
week at
then and
schools,
there.
the week after.
I'm waiting to hear a second. I'm just kidding.
DPW and
We have to make
police.
that motion.
And then April
We have
1st
to
would
make
be,
that motion on the floor.
April 1st would be planning board, April 8th would
Oh,
be,
so wait 4 meetings.
April 8th would be, what?
Voting.
No, I'm just waiting to see if we can close the meeting.
It doesn't say what kind of.
She was asking,
It just
she was
says-
trying to
April 8th would be
clarify
voting on the warrant, okay. And we
Yeah,
can't, we wouldn't meet April
that's great.
15th, that's too close, everything has to
Do a
be done by
friendly
then.
amendment.
It doesn't have to be done,
That's
it's
good.
close,
Laurel
and it's,
agree.
if that's typically, is that school vacation?
No,
week or
school
just-
vacation is the next
So
week.
we might, it depends on how we do it.
We should be
always
leaving
try
it
to-
for anything we couldn't
School
vote on.
vacation's the week of the 20th.
Any final business?
20th,
I agree.
yeah.
And you, oh wait.
Select board, we're gonna sign the warrant on the 21st.
Right, so yes, we need it done, because it takes
Okay.
a while to put it together and get it ready and.
Okay, thank you very much. Good discussion tonight. I will entertain a motion to
To
adjourn.
adjourn.
Second?
Motion to adjourn is made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Good night to all.